细高跟鞋，叫做帕体的细高跟鞋。
We will talk about Patti Stiletto's heels, and we will do so looking at the reflection of German sociologist Ulrich Beck, psychiatrist and psychoanalyst Carl Gustav Jung, and thanks to the approach proposed by psychosocial studies. In conclusion, I will clarify what is proposed using a clinical case.
那我们将会从如下的视角来讨论这样的一个话题。那第一个视角呢是来自于德国的社会学家贝克，第二个视角呢是来自于这个瑞士的精神病学家分析心理学家荣格的思想。那也会从社会心理学的视角来去看这样的一个问题。那么在论述之后，那我会以一个案例来进行说明。
Let's start with Patti Stiletto's heels. The first Patti I want to talk to you about. Who is Patti? Who was Patti? Patti was not Patti. In fact, Patti's real name is Marino. Marino is a name for a boy. Patti is named for a woman. Patti, in terms of identity, was Marino. Both Patti and Marino were both my mother's friend, born in 1950 and raised in a small town west of Milan.
那首先呢，我们从这个 Patti 的细高跟鞋开始。那我想说的是，首先，那谁是 Patti？ 确切的讲，谁曾经是 Patti？ 那这个 Patti 呢，它这个不是一个真名而指的是一种身份，是男孩或者是女孩。那他都是我母亲最好的朋友。他们出生于1950年，是在米兰西部的一个小镇上长大的。那这 Patti 出生的时候，他出生在一个男性的身体里。但是他很快意识到，那个女的她对踢足球、玩士兵和参加战争游戏不感兴趣。那么这个 Patti， 她喜欢在下午的时候玩娃娃，尤其是我妈妈的娃娃。那么在青春期前的时候，她更喜欢在下午尝试我妈妈的指甲油，甚至尝试偷偷的使用它。
Patti Marino was born in a male body and soon realized that she was not interested in playing soccer or with the toy soldiers or engaging in war games. Patti Marino prefers spending afternoons playing with dolls, especially my mother's doll. Then, a few years later, in pre-adolescence, she prefers spending afternoons trying my mother's nail polish, and secretly, even her mother. I repeat secretly, because in those years, one had to hide if, for example, a woman found herself loving another woman. A man found himself loving another man. A person acknowledged that their corporality did not correspond to their gender identity and therefore nurtured fantasy related to transition.
那么在青春期前，他喜欢在下午的时候，刚才说过尝试用我妈妈的指甲油，甚至偷偷的尝试他妈妈的，并且再说一遍，而且是悄悄的说，是偷他妈妈的。因为在那样的一个年代，一个人如果喜欢上了同性，是必须要去掩藏这个部分的。那么当一个人承认他们的肉体跟他们的性别身份不相符的时候，那并因此就产生了一些与性相关的幻想。
In this regard, the case of Italian poet Pierpaolo Pasolini is important. At night, in secret, he used to disappear to find love in hidden corners. Eventually, he also lost his life, far away from everyone.
那就在这个意义上来讲，帕索里尼，也就是今年是他的100周岁的这个诞辰。那他的例子是让人震惊的他是出于或许是防御的本能、羞耻，还是其他的原因，他背着所有的人在夜里这个最后是丧命的。
Yes, because in those years one had to hide, for example, as emphasized by our Jungian colleague Claudette Colcarni, quote, "A woman who finds herself loving another woman is often responding to a deeper psychological instinct to act, despite internal conflict or external opposition, and that this is a significant movement in the service of personal and collective individuation and a movement toward understanding oneself."
是的，在那些年里，一个人必须隐藏他的同性恋身份，正像是荣格分析家库尔卡尼他在1997年的时候所强调的那样，一个发现自己爱着另一个女人的女人， 往往是在对一种深层的心理本能做出反应，而不顾内部的冲突或者是外部的反对而采取的行动。这是一个服务于个人和集体的自信化的重要的行动，也是一个走向理解自己的行动。
Yes, because in those years one had to hide if considered that it was only in 1973 that the American Psychiatric Association, APA, removed the diagnosis of homosexuality from its DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual.
也正是因为如此，在这个1973年的时候，美国精神病学会才从精神诊断与统计手册当中删除了同性恋这一诊断，就会理解人们为什么不得不隐藏起这些需求了。
But let's go back to Patti Bormarino. Why am I talking about Patti and her story, which came to me and thus to you today in China, very far away from where I'm from? Through my mother. I talk about Patti because I met her when, in the early 80s, when I was 5 or 6 years old, and I certainly remember our meeting. I remember a woman with a chignon, a bit like Coco, and some facial hair. Because of her transition, for various reasons, especially economic ones, was only partial. I remember her warmth and kindness.
那我们再回到这个帕体上哈，那我们要谈论一下为什么要在这里这个经由我的母亲，今天要讲给中国的这些观众呢？那实际上这个故事是在80年代初，也就是我5、6岁的时候，我妈妈讲给我的。那我清楚的记得哈，那有一个女性的这个描述说梳着一个发髻，脸上留着胡须，因为她是个变性人。那我是当时记得她的温暖和善良的。
Only after that, and when I was already 18, did I understand that Patti was not born as a woman and that her real name was Marino. And so I decided to ask my mother some questions. And she told me a lot about her life and answered almost all my questions except one. She couldn't answer when I asked if Patti had died peacefully and serene.
那听到现在我们可能清楚了哈，我们现在介绍的讲的是一个变性人，本身是一个男性，他变性成为了一个女性。那这个我很关心这样的一个人，我也问到妈妈关于他的一些信息，那妈妈也给我讲了这个人的生活，那回答了我所有的问题。那除此之外哈，我还很好奇，我问到妈妈，那关于这个女性，她最终是否平静地死去了？但是我的妈妈却无法回答。
I want to bring you Patti's stories to pay a tribute to her and applaud her courage, the courage to not hide.
那我将 Patti 的故事带给大家，是想向她致敬，为她的勇气喝彩，为她的不躲藏的勇气喝彩。
And because, in my opinion, she was not fully allowed, as Claudette Colcarni says, to love who, by nature, she wanted to love. She was not allowed to love another person of any gender and thus respond to a deep psychological instinct to act, despite internal conflict or external opposition.
那在我看来，就像库尔卡尼所说的，那 Patti 呢，她并没有完全被允许去爱她想爱的人，从来没有被允许去爱另一个人，能够不顾内部冲突或者是外部的反对，对一种深层的心理本能做出反应。
Before talking about another Patti, a patient of mine, in this case an heterosexual man who ends up claiming to be queer, I would like to look at what sociology has theorized since the 90s.
那么在谈论另一个 Patti 之前，另一个人呢是一个异性恋的男性，他最终变成了酷儿。那首先呢，我想简要的回顾一下社会学自上个世纪90年代以来的理论发展。
Zygmunt Bauman is well known for his theory of liquidity. In Liquid Modernity, published in 2000, Bauman emphasized that what unites all forms of modern life is precisely their fragility, temporariness, vulnerability, and inclination to constant change. So, being modern means compulsively, obsessively, always becoming, avoiding competition, remaining indefinite.
那鲍曼的理论，他提到的是社会理论，流动社会的理论。那这个吉登斯强调了自我反思，拜克所提出我们应该成为可选择的人，但是这3个人都没能够描述 Party 的痛苦，甚至是之前的那个作为男性身份的时候他所承受的痛苦。
For Bauman, the modern person never reaches completion, but is rather involved in an endless series of new beginnings. In Modernity and Self-Identity, Giddens argues that people ask themselves what to do, how to act, who to be. These are focal questions for those living in the circumstances of late modernity, especially in the West, and to which, at some level or another, we all respond, both discursively and through everyday social behavior.
So I cannot end it here.
那鲍曼强调，将现代生活的所有形式联系在一起的，正是他们的脆弱性、暂时性、易受伤性和不断变化的倾向。所以，成为现代意味着现代化的过程，那总是强迫性的、强制性的成为、避免或者是保持不变。对鲍曼来说，现代人从来没有达到完满，而是陷入了一系列无穷无尽的新的尝试当中。
He continues, a personal identity is not to be found in behavior, nor important through this is the reaction of others, but in the capacity to keep a particular narrative going.
那他继续说，一个人的身份不是在行为中找到的，也不是在他人的反应中找到的，而是在保持特定叙事进行的能力中找到的。
It must continually integrate events which occur in the external world and sort them into an ongoing story about the self.
那在个人的这个传记的面向，如果是为了在日常世界中与他人保持有规律的互动，那么就不可能完全是虚构的，它必须要整理成关于自我的持续的故事。
German sociologist Ulrich Beck invented the term individualization, not individuation, individualization, that has become the source of the social structure of second modernity, our time. Individualization is a concept that describes a structural sociological transformation of social institutions and the individual's relationship with society.
Which part? I missed out.
This one. But we can also go here if you want. Back and back. Argue that we live in an era. Do you have it?
Yeah.
I go. Back and back argue that we live in an era where the social order of the nation state, class, ethnicity, race, and the traditional family is in decline. In an era where the ethics of self-realization and individual achievement is the most powerful current of modern society.
那在此贝克呢，他提到了一个个体化这样的一个概念，它指的是第二次现代性本身的社会结构的来源。那并非自性化哈，是个体化。它描述的是社会制度和个人关系在社会中的结构性社会学转型的概念。
The human being who chooses, decides, shapes, and aspires to be the author of their own life, the creator of an individual identity, is central character of our time. From here.
So that is.
那我们生活在一个民族、国家、阶级、传统家庭的社会秩序正在衰落的年代。我们现在是引用根斯海默，他说的是，在这个时代，自我实现和个人成就的伦理是现代社会最强大的潮流。
In some, Beck argues that individualization means the human being becomes a choice between possibilities, optiones, life, death, gender, corporality, identity, religion, marriage, parenthood, social bonds. Everything is becoming decidable down to the details. Once fragmented into option, everything must be decided.
那贝尔认为，自性化就意味着人类成为在各种可能性之间的一种选择，即人的选择包含以下：生、死、性别、肉体、身份、宗教、婚姻、为人父母、社会纽带、 具体到每个细节都变得具有可选择性。一旦被分割成选项，一切都必须被决定。
So, using the words of Italian professor Mauro Magatti and Chiara Giaccardi, if in Western society we have already freed ourselves from everything, what other liberation should we then seek? Why are men not yet free if they have freed themselves from the political, economic, and spiritual chains that have bound men for centuries? Why are rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide increasing?
那用马加蒂的话来讲，如果在西方社会我们已经解放了自己，那么我们应该寻求什么样的其他的解放呢？为什么人还没有自由？如果他们已经从束缚人的政治、经济和精神枷锁中解放出来的话，为什么焦虑、抑郁、自杀的比率在上升呢？
Mary Watkins has noted that it is the capacity for dialogue, not reason, that distinguishes human beings from other living beings. This dialogue takes place within oneself, with others, and with God.
沃特金斯指出，人类与其他生物的区别在于对话的能力，而非理性。这种对话发生在自己、他人和上帝之间。
And the capacity for dialogue is necessary precondition for human liberation, especially from rigid, stereotype, and one-dimensional limitations. In this view, limitation is based on a paradigm of interdependence, where the liberation of one is intimately connected to the liberation of the other. In this sense, the other can include economical, political, sociocultural, spiritual, and psychological entities. Thus, liberation, in my opinion, is precisely what psychosocial studies seek to investigate.
对话是人类解放的必要前提，尤其是从僵化、刻板、单向度的限制中解放出来。那在这种观点当中，解放是基于相互依赖的模式，其中一方的解放与另一方的解放密切相关。在这个意义上，他者可以包括经济、政治、社会文化、精神和心理实体。因此，解放在我看来，正是社会心理寻求调查的对象。
Now, for sake of time, I will skip an example where Jung talked about an homosexual patient who went to him to be cured of homosexuality. Jung didn't cure him of all his homosexuality, cure him of his immaturity.
那由于时间的原因这个个案我暂时就跳过去。那这个个案呢，实际上是写的是荣格和他的同性恋的病人。那这个病人呢是寻求治愈的但是他外表看上去还是比较幼稚的。那他的这个外表和他的表达方式上都呈现他是有一些少女的气息的。那这个回头我们用这个文章的形式呈现给大家。
We look at back process of individualization. Now let's remind, because we are tired this afternoon, what is Jung individuation.
前面呢介绍了一些社会学视角之下的个体化的理论。那我们接下来去转向荣格对于自性化的看法。
Jung claims that individuation, it is one's identification with the totality of the personality, with the self, and a process of differentiation which aims at the development of the individual personality. Thus, individuation is a moment when the individual is a point of intersection, a line of separation, neither conscious nor unconscious, but a bit of both. Furthermore, individuation is the process in which the patient becomes what she really is.
那首先呢，我们引用荣格对于自性化的这样的一个定义。那荣格所说到的是这个自性化呢，指的是一个人对人格整体的认同，是对自性的认同，也是一个分化的过程，目的是发展个人的整体人格。因此，自性化是这样的一个时刻，即个体处在一个交叉点或者是一条分离线上，既非意识的，也非无意识的，而是两者兼而有之。此外，自性化是一个过程，在这个过程当中，病人能够成为真正的自己。
Following Verena Kast, one of the most important post-Jungian she teaches in Zurich, individuating means becoming the person you have never been, which means becoming independent from parents and parental complexes, becoming more competent in relationship, becoming more whole, which means becoming more spiritual.
那接下来我们引用著名的荣格分析师 Cast 的理论，他说自信化就意味着人成为他从未成为的人，包含以下3个面向：第一个，从父母和父母的情节当中独立出来；第二个，在人际关系当中变得更有能力；第三个，变得更加完整，指的是在精神的面向上。
Following James Hillman, individuating means descending, making peace with your biological family, similarly to caste, find a place you can call home, and give something back to reality.
那我们引用 James Hillman 他对于自信化的观点，他认为自信化包含4个面向：第一个，要深入到深层，心灵的深层；第二个是与原生家庭进行和解；第三个，找到一个你可以称之为家的地方；第四个，可以回馈社会。
From my point of view, beyond what Cast and Hillman emphasize, individuation in the 21st century also involves asking for forgiveness. Forgive me. But without being forgiven, without the hope and expectation to be forgiven, offer our forgiveness. And following John Beebe, regaining integrity, which means virtue, knowledge, compassion, wisdom.
那除了 Cast 和 James Hillman 对于自信化的描述之外，我还想再补充2点。那第一点呢是请求原谅，就是我们直接呈现给对方我对你的原谅和谅解。那第二个呢是来自于 John Beebe 的理论哈，我们是要去重拾完整性。
Now let's talk about the second Patty. Patty is a Canadian carpenter living in Berlin, heterosexual, defining himself, herself, themselves queer.
那接下来我来介绍第2个 Patty 指的是这个生活在柏林的那个加拿大的木匠那异性恋将他称之为酷儿。
Patty is sociologically individualized, according to Beck, well adapted in the liquid society, according to Bauman. On one hand, he challenged the certainties of modern life, the social order of nation-state, moving from North America to Europe, class, gender, ethnicity, and traditional family structure, and struggle for self-realization. Simultaneously, however, even unconsciously, he felt trapped in the impasse described by Bauman. During our first session, Patty described a sense of emptiness, feeling stuck, and that a romantic relationship did not last.
那从贝克的理论来讲，Patty是一个已经实现了社会化的个体。那用鲍曼的理论来说，他是社会性流动中也适应得很好的人。一方面呢，Patty能够挑战现实生活的确定性，比如说民族、国家、阶级、性别、种族、传统家庭结构的社会秩序，并且为自我实现而奋斗。但是呢，与此同时，他甚至在不知不觉中陷入了鲍曼所讲的那样的一种僵局。在我们的第1次治疗当中 ，Patty 描述了一种空虚感，感觉自己被困住了。他的这个恋爱关系并没有持续下去。
From the first meeting where she showed up in works overalls, pearl-colored nail polish, and women's shoes with heels, it was clear he was aware of having a problem and was seeking a solution. But what was the problem?
第1次会面的时候，他身着工作服，涂着珍珠色的指甲油，穿着女士的高跟鞋。显然，他意识到自己遇到了问题，正在寻求解决的方案。但是问题是什么呢？
For Jung, the initial dream gives the analyst the opportunity to understand the true problem. Let's look at the initial dream together.
对于荣格来说，初始梦给了分析师能够理解真正问题的机会。那我们就来看一看他的初始梦。
I dreamt that I was in a bar, sandwich shop with 3 friends. We are in a public setting.
梦是这样的，我梦见和3个朋友在酒吧或者是三明治店，我们在一个公共环境当中。
Comment: The issue is collective, not only personal.
我的评论是，它的议题是集体性的，并非个体性的。
Dream again. I was at the bar ordering a sandwich.
继续梦说我在吧台点了一个三明治。
Comment: What is a sandwich? Fast food, right? Not a nutritional meal.
那我的评论是，什么是三明治呢？是快餐，不是很有营养的套餐。
Comment again. Patty comments that never received a sandwich because got distracted by the arrival of Isis, a woman.
还是评论我的病人跟我说，他从来没有拿到他的三明治，因为他的注意力被来的一个女性叫伊西斯吸引了。
When my friend Isis, this is the dream, when my friend Isis, named after the Egyptian goddess, not the terrorist organization, arrived and hugged me, I realized at that moment that I was attracted to her, and I gave her a very sensual hug.
大家听出来了，这个名字伊西斯哈，它指的是跟希腊的女神同名的，而并非是那个组织。接下来依然是梦的内容。他说，当我的这个伊西斯这个朋友来拥抱我的时候，我意识到在那一刻我被他吸引了，我给了他一个非常性感的拥抱。
Here, two aspects are important. The friend is named after the goddess Isis, but he think of the terrorist organization. Patty is sexually attracted to her, thus emphasizing the issue's eros and its impossibility and the sexualization of the friendship.
在此有两个很重要的元素，第一个，他的朋友是以女神伊西斯的名字命名的；第二个，Patty被那个女神那个女性有这种性的吸引力，从而强调了爱洛斯的问题和这段关系当中性化的问题。
Who is Isis? From the perspective of Greek mythology, she's the goddess of maternity, fertility, life, and magic. Isis protects women and children, heals the sick, and her maternal behavior was invoked in healing spells.
那谁是伊西斯呢？她是这个希腊神话的角度当中，她是掌管母性、生育、生命和魔力的女神。她保护儿童和妇女，治愈病人。她的母性的行为被用于治疗咒语。
Isis, the wife of Osiris, once Thet, jealous of his brother Osiris, hatched a plan to kill him, could not forget him. She searched everywhere until she found him in Byblos and brought his body back to Egypt. Set discovered it and tore his brother apart, scattering him far and wide. Then Isis managed to find and reunite the parts of her dead husband's body. Only his penis was missing. Using her magical powers, Isis succeeded in making Osiris whole, bound, neither alive nor dead. So I propose Isis is the symbol of integration. She is the soul that allows integration and transformation, thus liberation.
伊西斯另外一个身份，她是奥里西斯的妻子。那奥里西斯呢？是被他嫉妒他的兄弟塞斯杀死了，并且给他分尸了。那是伊西斯到处把他身体的残骸找了出来，然后并且他们重新组合在了一起。可以说，伊西斯使用了他的魔法，成功的将奥里西斯恢复完整，把他捆绑起来，并且使其既不生也不死。所以我认为，伊西斯是整合的象征，它是允许整合和转化，从而实现解放的灵魂。
Again, another bit from the dream. Isis was curled up on the couch with completely different clothing and glassing that she only wore in the evening. She seems very tired.
依然是梦伊西斯蜷缩在沙发上，穿着不同的衣服，戴着只在晚上戴的眼镜，看上去有些疲劳。
Here we move to a private setting, from the bar to a house, from the public bar to the private home. I ask Patty to tell more about Isis, and he tells me about a woman very different from the one represented in the dream. He says Isis is very sociable, organizer of fantastic parties, had an open relationship with her boyfriend, and led a very libertine life. Then he adds that she recently left her boyfriend and is now in a relationship with a woman, and now she is monogamous. What do Isis' glasses help to see? The transition from the public context to the private one.
接下来是我的评论。我们看到梦从公共的场所来到了私人的这个空间。 那前面公共的场所指的是吧台，私人的空间是刚才的第二个场景家。那我请巴蒂斯告诉我更多关于伊西斯的事情。他告诉我了一个梦，梦中代表的是这个与女性截然不同的另外的一个女性。他说伊西斯呢是非常善于交际的，她的男朋友跟她的关系是很开放，她过着放荡的生活。她还补充到，最近伊西斯和她的男朋友分手了现在是和一个女人在一起，并且是一夫一妻制。那伊西斯戴着一个眼镜，我就在想，他的眼镜究竟帮助他看清了什么？从公共的语境到私人语境的过渡。
Again from the dream, I tried to take a photo thinking she was cute, and she shyly put her hands over her face and then burst out telling me not to take a photo when she looked so ugly, so I put away the phone and sat on her lap.
接下来依然是梦，我认为伊西斯很可爱，我想给她拍一张照片。她害羞地把手放在脸上，然后突然情绪爆发地告诉我，她长得那么丑，不要拍照。于是我把手机收了起来，坐在她的腿上。
Appreciation, shame, inferiority, and anger are the emotions that refer to this part of the dream. So Patty puts away the phone, the symbol of the mediated relationship, and sits on the lap. The symbols of the relationship with the mother, of protection and regeneration of Isis.
感激、羞愧、自卑、愤怒都是梦的一部分情绪。于是帕蒂斯收起了手机，手机象征的是调节关系，然后坐在了伊西斯的腿上。那这象征着与母亲关系的象征，象征着保护和重生。
I asked my patient what came to his mind specifically about the last image sitting on the lap. He remained silent for a long time. Prolonged silence, I explained Jung, is an indicator of the activation of an unconscious complex. And then he makes a joke that has nothing to do with what we are saying and that sounds like an exorcism, as if he defended himself.
我问他最后一个对于坐在大腿上的意象会让他想到什么，他沉默了良久，给我说是一种跟我说像是一种无意识的情节被激活的标志一样，然后就开了一个与我们所说的无关的一个玩笑，听起来像是驱魔，仿佛是在为自己辩解。
So, what came to my mind is what he told me during the first session. I have not had traumatic experiences in my life, and then what he told me only a few sessions later. My mom died of uterine cancer when I was 2 years old.
这让我想起在第一次治疗的时候他对我说的话，他说我这辈子没有经历过创伤，然后在几次治疗之后他告诉我他的妈妈在他2岁的时候死于子宫癌。
I think that lap in English means this, knees, you put a lap here, right? But also means womb, maternal womb. The womb of the mother he has no memory of. Then, following my intuition, I asked him what comes to his mind when thinking about painted nails, nail polish. He answered without blinking, beauty. After a few seconds, I asked him why the choice of pearl color as nail polish. He tells me, still without blinking, as if he were not the one speaking, that this was his mother's favorite color.
那这个 lap 这个词在英语当中指的是大腿前侧，也有子宫的意思那是妈妈的子宫，她已经不记得了。然后我跟着我的直觉，我就问她，这个想到这个做的那个彩指甲，她脑海当中会浮现什么？她回答没有联想到美感。几秒钟之后，她又说她为什么会选择这个珍珠色的这样的一个美甲？她说这会让她想到她妈妈，这是她妈妈最喜欢的颜色。
Patty, in the dream we analyze, and through the friend Isis, who acts as a symbol for integration and the goddess of motherhood, has the need to return to the womb. Returning to the womb is necessary and perhaps will allow his rebirth. Regenerate as generating oneself. Before this, however, one must go through the need for integration. Integration the mother she has never truly known. Only in this way can Patty separate from her and truly be born. This will be possible only when she merges not to succumb to the temptation of sexual sublimation, sexual attraction to Isis, and self-destructive drifts. It is worth remembering Patti Marino alcoholism, brought about by the reference to Isis as the goddess, but the terrorist organization.
那在我们分析梦的过程当中，这个 Pattis 通过他的朋友伊西斯，也就是那个作为融合的象征和母性的那个女神，她需要回到子宫里面，回到子宫是必要的，而且将允许她获得重生，作为自己重新出生。那然而在此之前，一个人必须经历整合的需要，整合他从未真正了解的母亲，只有这样 ，Patti 才能从母亲的身上分离出来，自己获得真正的诞生。也只有当他设法不屈服于升华的性，也就是伊西斯的吸引力的时候，或者是作为女神的伊西斯有关的自我毁灭的那种放纵的诱惑的时候，这才有可能发生。
The emptiness that Patti referred to during our first session is therefore necessary. Unpleasant but necessary, the emptiness allows us to understand that their immaturity is related to the fact that he has not yet been born, to the fact that Patti lives in an embryonic state, not separate from her mother and subdued by the maternal complexes and must separate. Patti is like Osiris, a mummy without a penis, neither alive nor dead.
那因此呢 ，Patti 在我们的第一节咨询当中提到的空虚是必要的，不愉快是必要的。他的空虚让我们明白，他的不成熟与他还没有出生有关，与 Patti 生活在胚胎状态必须分离有关。Patti 就像奥里西斯，一个没有阴茎的木乃伊，他既不是活着的，也不是死了的。
Therefore, Patti must differentiate and have her primary goal the development of her individual personality. To date, Patti is not differentiated. But thanks to the dream we have analyzed, we can recognize psychological and differentiation and, from an aesthetic point of view, pseudo-maternal integration sanctioned by the use of pearl core, nail polish, and stilettos.
因此 ，Patti 必须有所分化，并且以个人个性为发展的首要目标来进行分化。到目前为止 ，Patti 还没有分化，但得益于我们分析过的梦，我们可以认识到他心理上没有分化，或者是从美学的角度上来看，他与为母亲的那样的一种融合。这可以从他对珍珠色的指甲油和细高跟鞋的使用当中得到确认。
Here, as with young patient, it is not about curing homosexuality or queerness, and therefore the need for conformity to society, as the Frankfurt School believed, but about revealing a secret and underground bond that is consciously expressed in wearing nail polish and heels and unconsciously expressed through this dream. Thank you.
那在这里和荣格的病人一样，我们并不是要去治愈他的同性恋或者是他的酷儿身份，从而让他和社会保持一致，而是要揭示一种秘密的地下的一种纽带。这种纽带在涂指甲油和穿高跟鞋时有意识地表达出来，并且通过这个梦无意识地表达出来。谢谢大家。
Thank you, Dr. Thank you so much. Thank you.